See, I feel like trade shows like PepCom are actually in some ways cooler than the big ones because you can actually like really like it's not nearly as big.
Yeah, it was a little more intimate. I got some, I got to talk to people like Hone chair, HON. That chair company was there. I have a Hone chair back here, so I got to talk to that guy. It was nice. And then Anker was there with some interesting stuff. Anker had they had the normal the new Qi 2 wireless chargers, but then they also had breast pumps, all made by Anker. Then they also had a robot vacuum, which I guess was on point. But then they had 120-pound battery on wheels that you can bring with you. Yeah. So stuff was all over the place.
They're just like, hey,
trying to do everything.
If it exists, let's cover it, right?
Yeah.
If it exists, let's
if it has electricity in it, it's fair game.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
No, but we're here to talk about what happened this week because we have
PepCom.
At PepCom, yeah, because that's the only thing that happened, you know. But no, we've been talking about these supposed iPads for how long?
Seems like years.
It's supposed to be in March, so they were going to be announced in April, and we finally got them. And I don't know. I'm a little in between. I'm very tame in my expectation. I'm very excited for it overall as a synopsis. But I'm also knowing that I'm going to be using iPadOS 17.5, whether it's a 10-year-old iPad or a brand new iPad. So
yeah. All right. So what would you say was your not your knee-jerk reaction, but sort of the reaction after the reaction? Because it's always we see everything and we're just kind of overwhelmed, sensory overload, but then we get some time to actually, okay, so this is what happened. What was your takeaway?
My takeaway is that, again, I am excited for them. The hardware looks cool. I'm excited for a new Magic Keyboard. Anything that's new is going to have a good, a positive light to it, in my opinion. I'm there for the thinness over the battery life, just because it becomes a little bit lighter. My gut reaction overall was, I like it. I'm excited for it, but I also know that it's not going to really change my day-to-day and how I use the iPad. That was pretty much what it was. It'll probably be a little bit faster when I'm exporting stuff maybe, or when I'm making thumbnails, because I'm going from the M1 to the M4, and I'm also going from 8 gigs of RAM to 16, so that should have some sort of tangible effect. But for the day-to-day stuff, if I'm just looking stuff up in Safari or going on Slack or on YouTube or whatever it is, it's going to be pretty much the same.
Yeah, that was kind of my takeaway. I have to admit, and I was slightly whelmed by this event. It was cool. I don't think we had I'm sort of like you. It's at the end of the day, what is this actually changing?
Yeah, for sure.
Doesn't seem like that. There's not too much that it's changing. I feel like the iPhone 15 was a bigger change.
Yeah,
compared to the previous version versus the iPad compared to its previous version, which was released back in 2022.
Yeah. Even if you compare back to the 2018 one, honestly.
Yeah, really. Yeah, exactly.
Especially now that we're down to one camera again, which we'll get to in a little bit. But yeah, no, I mean, I agree. The change because I went from iPhone 13 to 15, or 13 Pro Max to 15 Pro Max, and that one gave you a tangible difference, both aesthetically, because it looked a little bit different. It was the material choices were different, but then USB-C added real functionality to it, which really changed how you use the iPhone. So, the way that I'm going to use the iPad is still going to be the same exact way that I've used iPad since 2018. It's just going to it's going to be a cooler form factor, in my opinion. But yeah, like you said, I think iPadOS 17 and 7 or 17.5, depending on which one you're on, it's going to still be the same thing. If anything, if you're an artist or a designer that's hardcore, you might see a real tangible difference with the new Apple Pencil Pro that you can kind of take advantage of.
Yeah.
But for most people that just kind of take notes, it's really going to be the same thing. Find My will be nice, but we'll definitely dig into every little nuance as we go further in the video, because we definitely got to talk about all that.
Yeah, so just right off the bat, you mentioned it fitting everything in there. So Apple had this advertisement that has proved to be controversial for whatever reason. It wasn't that controversial to me. I got where they were going with it. I didn't take offense to that. Maybe I'm not creative enough. Maybe I don't know.
Yeah, maybe I'm in the digital world now where I'm not using anything physical anymore.
Yeah. So they had this ad where they had all these different artifacts, so to speak, like an arcade machine, physical instruments, all these, like a record player, all these things. And there was like, those YouTube videos where they crush stuff and just see what happens.
They've been on my feed
like,
recently. That's probably why they made this ad.
Yeah. So they had this thing, this like, I don't know what you call those. Is it like a pressure?
Like a hydraulic. Yeah.
Hydraulic.
Let's just call it a
Press?
Yeah.
So they took all these artifacts, all these like physical, tangible things, and they just crushed them. There was like paint cans in there, and they just literally just crushed everything. And then the thing raises up, and it shows, they say, the thinnest iPad yet. So it's like, you can do all these different things from all these different artistic areas with the iPad, which is now thinner than ever. Yeah. I thought it was cool. I was not offended by this at all.
Saying that like how dare Apple like kill off creativity. If anything, it might be the most artistic thing to do. I thought that was very symbolic and metaphorical, and it worked correctly. They were trying to portray that you can do everything on the iPad creatively. Yeah. And to me, it hit home. But some people got a little upset about it.
I didn't take it that literally. Like, obviously, they're not saying throw your trumpet away.
Or throw your saying, like, grand piano into the garbage. Like,
Yeah. Maybe this could have been done in I don't understand how they could have done it with the same sort of... I don't know. I thought it was effective. I thought it was cool. I wasn't offended by this at all.
Yeah. Let us know with a comment. What do you guys think about it? I thought it was cool overall. The scene was set correctly. And it was just like an ultra thin iPad. Came from all the hundreds of pounds and of material and things like that, which is cool. Because you can't do a lot on the iPad. But you've been able to do a lot on the iPad even before how thin this one was.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was the ad.
So, with that being said, let's talk about the iPad Air, because that was the first product that Apple revealed. Mm-hmm. That was first, right? Yeah, that was.
Yeah, first. They talked. What did they? They talked a little bit about the MacBook Air. They talked
Vision Pro.
Talk Vision Pro, yeah, they did. Then they jumped right into the iPad Air.
Yeah,
which was a nice welcome upgrade. But it does kind of make you think. I guess we'll run through the specs, but it's just funny how that one's called the Air, and the Air was always supposed to be like the lightweight, the lightweight one essentially. That's what Air used to symbolize. But we're basically getting what I would consider just remade iPad Pros, like older iPad Pros with a 60 hertz display. That's kind of what we're getting out of the iPad
basically.
Air now.
Yeah. Same form factor, pretty much.
We're going from we got 11-inch, we got 13-inch, which is cool. So like we've been saying, I think the 13-inch iPad Air is going to be the bestseller, best-selling iPad.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
And they fixed a lot of things that 2024ified the iPad Air lineup, right? So they went from the base model being 64 gigs to 128 gigs, which is a very welcome starting point. They kept the price the same for the 11-inch version at $599 for the baseline model. It comes in 4 new colors. It was space gray, silver, purple, blue, right?
The purple and blue are like new remixes of the previous purple and blue, and then they have starlight, and then they have space gray. They actually dropped, I think, the pink option, and did they have silver as well?
They might have had silver, and they replaced it with starlight.
Yeah, so they dropped the pink option as well. That was an option. Shout out to iJustine. And so the 13-inch actually gets a little bit brighter display as well. So it goes from, well, they didn't have a 13-inch Air before, but this one is 600 nits versus 500 nits on the 11-inch Air.
Which is a nice little upgrade. And then, but what else do we have? We can go up to 1 terabyte now in terms of storage. So if you want to really max that thing out, you can. Whereas previously, I believe it was 512 was as high as you could go. Or no, it was 256.
Yeah, so 512 and 1 terabyte are the new ones, which is cool.
Yeah. One thing to note about the 1 terabyte, with the previous iPad Pros, if you went to 1 terabyte, you would get the 16 gigs of RAM. The 1 terabyte version of the iPad Air remains with 8 gigs of RAM. So take note. Because I know people might upgrade to 1 terabyte thinking they're getting 16 gigs of RAM when they're not. But what else did we get in there? M2 chip was put in here, so it'll be a little faster. A little bit more performance boosting. And then, we got everything just kind of was upgraded internally to Wi-Fi 6E, Bluetooth 5.3, just from a connectivity standpoint. So overall, just a welcome upgrade, I think, for the iPad Air. A good little successor to what we've had before.
And you get the hover support because you get that M2 chip
True.
for Apple Pencil, so that's pretty cool. And then you also get support for the Apple Pencil Pro, which is pretty cool. Fernando was telling me, like, he educated me on the whole Apple Pencil, and he did an amazing video on this as well. So
situation's a mess.
check out his video, man, because you're gonna need that to understand what's going on. Because I thought that the new iPad Air and new iPad Pro supported the second generation Apple Pencil that I have right here, and I have several of them laying around here.
Yeah.
It doesn't. It only supports the iPad or the Apple Pencil Pro and the Apple Pencil USB-C because Fernando theorizes that it's because of the
new landscape camera.
The landscape camera.
Yeah.
So
I think it just changed like how it charges physically, like where the charging points are, where the magnets are. And I mean, I'm sure Apple could have easily just moved the Apple Pencil charging to like the right-hand side or the left-hand side. But, you know, typical Apple fashion. But at least you have the ability to use a cheaper pencil still with the USB-C Apple Pencil. So you don't have to go get the $130 Apple Pencil Pro. But if you do have an Apple Pencil 2 laying around and you want to get the new M4 iPad Pro or M2 iPad Air, it's just not going to work. It won't pair. It won't connect. We'll definitely test it out once we get it in hand. But according to Apple, it won't work.
So I think if you're getting an Air or you're getting a Pro, you definitely want the Apple Pencil Pro. Like, there's no question. Like, and it's not even that. I was surprised it was only $129 only, but I thought for sure it'd be $199.
Yeah, I was thinking maybe $179. You know, bump it up $50. But yeah, I mean, they kept it the same price, which again, the Apple Pencil 2 is still being sold by Apple at $129.
Exactly, they're the same price.
Which is weird. And there's so much more function on the Apple Pencil Pro.
Yeah.
But again, the Apple Pencil Pro only works with these two iPads. If you have an old M2 iPad Pro or older iPad Mini, older iPad Airs, it's not going to work. So keep that in mind as well. That's when I guess you have to get the Pencil 2.
Yeah, and another cool thing about this iPad Air is it supports the Magic Keyboard, right? So did the previous Air support the Magic Keyboard?
It did, yeah.
It did.
10.9-inch Air supported the 11-inch Magic Keyboard. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So this one supports both Magic Keyboards. So the 11.
Does it support? I'm gonna check live.
I'm pretty sure the 13-inch iPad Air supports the Magic Keyboard too.
The new one or the old?
No,
one?
not the new one. Just the existing.
Yeah.
Not the Magic Keyboard for iPad Pro.
Yeah.
But I'm just talking about the regular Magic Keyboard, both the 11-inch version of it and the 12.9-inch version. I'm pretty sure they both support. I would think.
Yeah, they do. They definitely do.
They do?
Yeah.
So even though the iPad Air is 13 inches, it supports the Magic Keyboard for the 12.9-inch iPad Pro.
Maybe we should make a video on the keyboard situation too, because now we have the iPad Pro Magic Keyboard, the new one. You have the old Magic Keyboard for the iPad Pros and iPad Airs. You still have the Slim Folio keyboard, which is out there, that Apple sells. Then you have the Smart Folio keyboard, I think it's called, for the iPad 10th generation that they sell, right? Yeah, those. And again, it's a mess on what accessories work with what.
Someone should make a video. It's not going to be me, but someone should make. I can barely make one video, but someone should make a video about how many different possible combinations. So, do you mention that how many iPad configurations, SKUs are out there?
There are 48 different iPads that you can buy. Again, yes, that includes all the different storage options and the Wi-Fi options and the color options, but 48 different iPads to choose from.
That is insane.
They all do the same thing, but different. You know?
That is like insane. That is think about the amount of overhead, like just the production and just the amount of like overhead that is just within Apple. Like
crazy.
48 different SKUs, and these are all literally different in some way. They're different, right? Yeah. It's not like they can get these and then they get them in house and then they say, "Oh, you won't."
Yeah, they
base
they're
black.
They're not like modular or whatever, you know.
Yeah,
like
they're not modular. Like these are actual different.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. These are different like products.
Yeah, and thank goodness they dropped the 9th gen iPad, because if not, it would have been even worse.
You would have had over 50 different SKUs. But that being said, I think someone should make a video that shows how many different accessory combinations you can have. With dude, I mean, we're talking millions. There'll probably be over 1 million different
Yeah, at least
combinations you could
hundreds of
have
thousands.
easily.
Because even the 10th generation, a 2024 iPad only works with a 9-year-old Gen 1 Apple Pencil. Let that sink in. Let that sink in for a second. That Apple's still selling their Gen 1 Pencil for the 10th Gen iPad, which is weird.
Does any other iPad use the Gen 1 pencil?
No. Well, I mean, obviously, none in the lineup, in the current lineup.
None in the lineup. Okay.
Yeah. So,
Man.
So again, it's just a weird situation.
Dude, I feel like we're back in like early 90s Apple again with
Just
regard
throwing
to
stuff at the wall, seeing what sticks, seeing what people buy.
like just yeah, I mean that lineup was so confusing back then. I remember just going like to Comp USA and then just being overwhelmed with
Comp
the
USA,
different
what a throwback.
yeah, like the different combinations because they sold Macs there.
Yeah.
And I think they sold the Macs that like the third party Macs, I believe.
Like
Like
third-party Macs?
yeah, like Apple license the ability.
Kind of like Windows does? No.
Yeah, like I'm
Really?
pretty sure. I could be misremembering that, but I think for sure Apple licensed Mac OS back in the 90s, and like there were like these Mac OS
Oh,
clones.
I bet
guess.
you it happened before, like during that stint where Steve Jobs wasn't there.
Oh yeah, he was
Yeah.
not there. He was
Yeah.
not having that. Like as soon as he came back, he was like, "All right, all this is getting
Yeah.
down. We're going down to this 4-quarter quadrant."
Mm-hmm.
But now they're so far in the opposite direction of that. It's just like the simplicity is gone.
And then
And I'm not-
I don't know. It's just crazy.
I'm not being negative. I mean, I don't think it's a negative thing. It's just an observation. Like,
Yeah.
it's just.
I guess
like-
more options are good until it gets confusing.
But imagine your mom
Yeah.
going into an Apple store and trying to decipher, or just being online and trying to decipher which iPad to buy. Like, how would she know?
And now they all kind of look the same now. You know, they're all just like the same thing, just different sizes and different colors. So like to anybody else that isn't kind of in the nitty gritty, it's like, oh, like the OS looks the same across for them, which is a good thing and a bad thing, right? It's like you're spending $300 on an entry level iPad that can do 98% of what the $1,300 iPad can do, right? So it's kind of, again, like I said, a good thing and a bad thing, or it's just again an observation at the end of the day.
It's kind of wild. But yeah, so that's the iPad Air. Again, first time we've had a larger version for the iPad Air, which is cool. I do think this is probably the best bang for the buck
Yeah,
out there in the lineup.
agreed.
But that being said, I still think the iPad 10th generation is
That's a good one.
like that would be my de facto recommendation to anyone who's just using like super casual usage, like the
What is it? Is it down to $350 now? They reduced the price
350,
Yeah.
$349,
for 64
which it should have been
gigs?
all
Yeah.
from the beginning. It should have been that price.
Apple took a while to get rid of the 9th gen because I feel like a lot of schools were using the 9th gen one. That's why, right? A lot of education systems. But yeah, that's the iPad Air. And then I guess the last thing about the iPad Air, it still obviously has Touch ID versus Face ID. And then the 60 hertz LCD panel versus the 120 hertz ProMotion. But like I said, best bang for your buck. I think the 13-inch one's going to have the best battery life out of any iPad because it's not pushing too much on the screen and it's a bigger battery. And it remains with the same thickness as before versus, we'll get to the iPad Pro in a little bit. And it works with most of the accessories like we mentioned, as opposed to but the only thing that doesn't work with is the Apple Pencil Gen 2. So keep that in mind.
Pound for pound, the best iPad out there. The 11-inch iPad Air is a pretty good value.
Yeah,
That's pretty good value.
There's an M2 chip in there, dude. Like I've been using my iPad Pro M1 to edit videos and edit thumbnails and push it to. I'm not playing too many games or anything like that, but I feel like I push it pretty hard. So now the iPad Air having an M2, I think it's going to be
$599.
Yeah,
it's pretty good.
That thing will last. I'm gonna say like 7, 8, 9 years. If somebody buys it and you're using it just like a normal iPad, that's gonna last you forever.
And you get 128 gigabytes of storage with the base model, which is not. Just think the Pros used to come with that at the base, so that's pretty good, man. Like I said, even the more I talk about this, to me, it is hands down the
best value.
The best value pound for pound that Apple offers.
Yeah.
Now.
So that's the iPad Air, everybody. We definitely I picked one up in the 13-inch blue color, I believe, the baseline model, just to kind of play with it, test it out. I kind of want to mostly compare it to the older iPad Pros. I think that's the comparison I want to make. I don't want to compare it to the new iPad Pro. I want to see if it's because now you got to make a decision. Like, you probably find a used iPad Pro, an M1 or an M2 now for $600, $700, $800. So it's like that age old question: do you buy like the higher end version that's older, or do you buy the lower end version that's newer?
If it's a question of that, that was a more difficult question to answer. It's less difficult if you're comparing the 11-inch version, right? Because the 11-inch Pro doesn't have the super nice screen.
Mm-hmm.
It has ProMotion, but it doesn't have the mini LED display. Now, if you're comparing the 12.9-inch version, there's where, if you can get a used version of that, I would pick that over the 13-inch iPad Air 10 times out of 10 times.
Yeah, I agree. If you're paying the same price, I agree. 100%.
Yep. And you probably will, because iPad resale value is garbage. Like, they offered me $510 for my 2 terabyte iPad Pro with 16 gigabytes of RAM.
That's wild.
They offered me $500 for that. Like,
That's what they offered me for my baseline M1 iPad Pro. $510.
I know, that's the thing.
I don't care about the storage.
Exactly. That I don't care. All right, so it wouldn't bother me. Like, I think $500 is obviously low, but I get it. Like, it's 1/4 of the price of the iPad.
They're making it easy for the trade-in. They send you the trade-in box. It takes the price right off, right when you check out. You're paying for the convenience.
I get that. Yeah. I understand that. But what hurts is the fact that his iPad, his cheap iPad is, you're saying it's the same value as my 2 terabyte iPad with double the RAM. How is that in any world? How is that? You
probably paid double what I paid for my iPad. Easy.
I'm sure. I think it was like $2,500.
Yeah, I think I paid like $1,200 for mine.
$2,500 after tax.
So I'm getting half the value back, or a little less than half, and you're getting a quarter of the value, even less.
Less than a quarter.
Yeah,
less than a quarter, man.
Which is not nice, Apple. I wonder if they give you even. I wonder if they give you. They probably don't even give you more credit if you have like a cellular version either, because that's another $200 upgrade. So I bet you.
I don't know about that.
Across the board, this is what you get. I guess I saw that the iPad you get up to $580. I wonder who's getting the $580.
The $580, I can tell you, it's the 2020. See, I have a 2020 model.
Okay.
Hold up. Yeah, I have the one before Hover came out.
That's the one I have too. Yeah.
So I'm pretty sure that extra $70 is for that M2 chip.
Yeah.
Right. The iPad Pro with the M2, which I get that, but it's just like, it's one thing. I'm gonna get another 3-star rating on the podcast app.
That's right. We're just speaking the truth, because I agree with you. Apple's killing us.
So all right. So you want? There's 3 different tiers of outrage here. Okay. Tier 1 of outrage is the fact that if I want 16 gigabytes of RAM, I am forced. It's not a suggestion. You are forced to upgrade to the 1 terabyte or 2 terabyte iPads. If I want the Nano-texture display, it's not an option. You are forced to upgrade to the 1 terabyte or 16 terabyte version. Okay, so that's outrage tier 1.
Yeah.
Outrage tier 2 is the fact that when I want to trade this in, all of a sudden it's the opposite. It's like it's a complete opposite. Okay, they're basically saying, well, your upgrade doesn't exist. Your upgrade doesn't exist. It does not even. It's the same iPad. So if it's the same iPad when I trade it in, why is there such a huge discrepancy when I'm buying it?
You know they're making their margins on the storage for sure.
Absolutely, and you can't upgrade them yourself.
No.
So it's like
they're about to lose a lifelong customer.
No, then I mean, come on, let's be serious. I'm gonna like that's the thing. That's what hurts the most, because they know I have no choice. Like they're like, you're going to do this. Yeah. Period. You don't have a choice.
Let's get into that iPad Pro situation. Like which one did you pick up, if any?
So I did pick up I only bought one thing at this event so far, and that was just the 13-inch iPad Pro, the base model.
Okay. What color?
That was it. Black.
Yeah,
Space black.
Space black. Yeah, so I did the same, but I did go with the one. I went with the 1 TB, the 1 terabyte version, because I wanted the 16.
Why is that, Fernando?
Because
Why'd
I was
you do
forced to. I
You were
wanted
forced.
512 with 16 gigs of RAM. Like that would have been my perfect spec. But again, I was forced, and I ordered. So what I did first was to, because you know how Apple does it. You have to pre-order it right away. If not, it's going to start getting delayed. So I pre-ordered the 512 version, and then I molded over, and then 2 hours later, I just checked to see if the 1 terabyte version was still shipping by May 15th, and it was. So I ordered that one, and then canceled my 512 order. Because I was like, you know what? If I'm going to go all out, let me see if 16 gigs of RAM is really something that helps out in the long run. And that's kind of why I did it. But again, I had to go with 1 terabyte, which is $18.99 for a tablet, bro. $18.99. And then if I wanted and the cheapest way to get the Nano-texture display is $2,000. Because you have to pay an extra $100 to get that Nano-texture display, which I didn't go with, by the way. But now I'm scared that like 2-3 years down the road, when I'm going to go trade this thing in, Apple's going to give me like $200.
You know they are.
Yeah.
You know that. So the upgrades only exist when you're buying them. That's the only time they exist. Otherwise, they don't exist.
Yeah.
So,
and even in the secondary, like you could probably get a little bit more in the secondary market if you try to sell it yourself. But people aren't like people don't value the storage capacity. Like you won't get much more. Maybe you'll get a little bit more. But if I see something on Facebook Marketplace or eBay or whatever, the baseline versus like a 512 or a 1 terabyte, the difference is going to be non-existent. But the iPad Pro does look cool, at least. It looks cool. It
does.
You know?
It does.
So we did get 2 brand new iPad Pros, right? The 11-inch, 13-inch. They gave us OLED displays on both of them, so there's no longer... Now the only thing that you're paying for, if I'm not mistaken, is the size, right?
Yeah.
Whereas previously you were paying, I guess, for the mini LED display as well and things like that. But yeah, so it comes in 2 colors: silver, space black. The big upgrade was the M4 being put in there. You have the tandem OLED display, which I'll probably let Jeff talk about that a little bit more, but just means it's going to be a very bright display. And people that got some hands-on experience were telling me that, yeah, it's very bright, especially with HDR. It is ultra thin. I thought the ad was cool with the little iPod Nano, a little throwback. I thought that was cool.
Yep.
Overall, I'm happy with the hardware upgrades. I am very happy with them. I think it's going to make a tangible difference day to day, especially if you're doing some intensive tasks like exporting video, rendering photos, maybe doing some coding, making games and things like that. Like that sheer raw power of the iPad Pro has never been really questioned, and it's just better now. So that was my, again, another like knee jerk or gut reaction. It was just, I like the hardware that's coming out of it all.
Yeah, the hardware is
impressive.
Like, I mean, there's not another piece of hardware that Apple makes outside of maybe the Vision Pro that compares as far as like impressiveness of just all the elements coming together. Like you mentioned, the tandem OLED display. Apple's marketing it as an Ultra Retina XDR display. I think that's the first time they've used that marketing term. So it's a tandem OLED. So basically taking 2 OLED layers and combining them. So that, because traditionally OLED displays have been less bright than your typical LCD display, right? They don't have the amount of brightness, thus it makes it less. It makes HDR in various applications in that area
a little dimmer,
not as feasible. Yeah. So and that was one of my questions. Going into this, I was thinking, how is Apple going to make this thing bright enough? To compare or to have parity with the outgoing model. And that's what they did. They doubled it up. So it's maintaining those brightness characteristics. 1,000 nits just across the board for HDR and SDR. And then 1,600 nits peak brightness for HDR content.
Which would be nice. Because the iPad is still a mobile computer. So some people like to play with that thing outside, and we're hitting the summertime, so having that extra brightness will definitely help. Against like a glare of the sun.
Yeah. And 2,000,000:1 contrast ratio. So you can imagine the blacks and how inky those will be. And thinking about HDR content, like when I think of HDR, I always think of that movie Pacific Rim, because it has like some of the best HDR out there. And though I don't really like that movie, but
I
Like I
remember it was a
always go
sleeper
to it
movie.
as
I watched that movie not thinking much of it, and then I was like, oh, that was pretty good.
yeah. I mean, it's all right.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the HDR on that movie is like, to me, that's what I always
intense.
go to
Yeah.
when I compare HDR, because it's super intense. So I can imagine how good that looks on this new iPad Pro.
No, it's definitely going to be a beautiful viewing experience, I think. You know, so if
Yeah.
you're buying this $1,300 iPad just to watch movies, you know, it'll be good. I don't know if
Yeah.
but I guess it kind of might be worth the $1,300, because if you think about it, Pro Display XDR is $5,000, and I think like the iPad Pro, the screen has always been like, that's as close as you can get at that form factor in terms of like what you're getting visually from
The iPad Pro is
an amazing display on its own.
way beyond.
Take the computer out of it. The display is awesome.
It's beyond the Pro Display XDR.
Yeah.
It makes the Pro Display XDR look laughable,
Mm-hmm.
frankly, because not only do you get well, you don't really have local dimming zones now, because the entire thing is a local dimming zone. Every pixel is locally dimmable. But in the previous version, there were like 2,500 zones, I think.
There was a lot,
I mean, it put the Pro Display XDR to shame in that area. And just not even that, you get a much faster refresh rate as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I think greater pixel density on top of that. So it's just, I can't wait to see what the new Pro Display XDR will look like, if they ever make one.
I'm sure they will.
Because
they gotta. Just get ready to probably like $8,000, and then you could probably trade yours in for $500.
yeah, it'll definitely be an 8K display, I would imagine.
Yeah.
But yeah, probably 1,000 per K.
Easily.
Yeah.
So Apple debuted their M4 chip in this thing, and I guess, do you see any tangible difference compared to the M3? Like, it's supposed to, there's a big emphasis on the neural engine in this one, because I think iPadOS and iOS 18 are going to be pushing, Apple used AI for the first time in anything, right? Normally it's machine learning this, machine learning that, but they used AI, the moniker.
Until we get benchmarks and stuff like that, it's hard to comment on the actual performance. But they're saying it's 4 times faster pro rendering performance than the M2, up to, they always use that qualifier, and up to 1.5 times faster CPU performance than the M2. The big thing here, though, is that you're going from an M2 to the M4, M3/M4, right? So I think regardless of what iPad you're coming from, the new Pro is going to be a huge upgrade.
Yeah.
I don't care if you're coming from the 2022 iPad Pro.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be a major upgrade. And that may sound like contradictory to my earlier statements, but it is still a big upgrade. Mm-hmm. It's just the way Apple goes about the upgrades that makes me upset. But I don't think there's any question that this is a major upgrade, even for the 2022 M2 Pro. Yeah. But if you're coming from the M1, I think that's even a greater upgrade.
Yeah,
so
which I'm excited for.
And so am I too. So,
no, I'm excited to see what that all looks like. And then, but yeah, same thing applies. What we were talking about. So to get the 16 gigs of RAM, you gotta rock with the 1 or 2 terabyte models. The 1 and 2 terabyte models also give you an extra core on the CPU side, which I'm sure there's a decent amount of benefit for that as well. But again, once we test it and get some benchmarks and kind of see exactly what's going on, we'll let you guys know. So definitely stay subscribed, because I'm excited to see what all the new sheer power is going to give us. Because again, iPad Pro has always been ahead of the game since 2018 even. That thing still is a tank. So I want to see what applications take advantage of it. I know that they had a segment with Procreate. That was mostly around the Apple Pencil use cases, which we'll touch on a little bit. But they did reference the power of the M4 chip and how it's helping from the rendering side in real time. And so if you use your iPad to really push its limits, you'll get some benefit out of that, I think.
Yeah, and not to mention that the 1 and 2 terabyte models not just get an extra core, but you get an extra performance core. Mm-hmm. So there could be it probably won't be major, but there could be a difference for multi-threaded applications, video exporting and stuff like that. So I think if you're a creative, the 1 terabyte model is the one to go for sure.
Absolutely. And then I guess outside of that, we got the Nano-texture display, which is cool. But again, I think in Apple's defense, I think the reason they put it at that $2,000 price point is because they don't want just somebody to walk into an Apple store and like buy it just because it's a Nano-texture display. I think Apple wanted the correct person to buy the Nano-texture display, and that's why they made the decision to go cost prohibitive on it and make you spend $2,000 on it. That's just my theory.
Yeah, I think there's a market. I mean, this exists for a reason, right? And Apple has the data on this. They probably know, they'll have some kind of ballpark figure on how many people use screen protectors that are like,
I'm sure they have an idea.
Textured. But like, if you're using an iPad in direct sunlight, like if you're using it outdoors, say you're a sports newscaster or somebody covering ESPN, you have your iPad there, and you're in a stadium.
Yeah,
like it's going to make a huge difference to have that nano texture, and it's going to be better than a traditional, like in general, a traditional screen protector. But you are limiting clarity. You're limiting contrast ratio. That it's not going to have that same pop as a glossy display. We've covered that before, but that's just something to keep in mind. So if you're like, "Oh, this is cool," don't order it just because it's new.
Yeah,
make sure you know what you're doing, because 9 times out of 10, you're not going to want a nano texture display unless you're using your iPad in ambient lighting on a regular basis.
No, absolutely. And if you do want like some sort of text, there's texture screen protectors all outside of there, you know, like $20, $30, $40 that you can take off and on and things like that. So if you do want that experience and not fully commit, because once you buy it, that's it. You're stuck with that thing. So yeah, there's definitely other options out there for the people that just want the use cases every now and then, you know?
Yeah. One other thing, though, I saw was the Magic Keyboard has faster pass-through charging.
Yeah, I saw that too.
Yeah.
They didn't mention specifically that the iPad could take in more power, but they said that the Magic Keyboard supports up to 60 watts of charging, which I thought was... So I'm assuming that means that the iPad can now take 60 watts of charging. But I'm surprised they didn't just give us more functionality out of the Magic Keyboard from that sense. You know, I really thought we were going to get an additional port, or again, like a modular port that we can use from the Apple Keyboard or Magic Keyboard. But I mean, let's talk about the Magic Keyboard since we're here. It does look a little different for the most part. It's still keeping that double hinge design, which I'm happy about because it is kind of unique to the iPad. They added the function row, which is something, you know, people have been wanting for a little while now. It's kind of in the half chiclet size keys, so that's good. And then they added, so where the keyboard and mouse are, or the trackpad are, is now aluminum. So supposedly it feels a little bit more like a MacBook Pro, but they still kept the same like texture, kind of like rubbery material on the outside of it.
On the outside, okay, yeah, that's why I wasn't totally clear on that. I didn't really know where the aluminum was, but it's just on the part your hands are touching as you type, right?
So, which I think is cool. You know, I think Apple's trying to close the gap between a MacBook Pro user and an iPad Pro user, but they're still keeping the gap there on purpose. So they want it to be familiar for people to kind of go from a MacBook Pro down to the iPad Pro, or if it even is down, I don't know, depending on which Mac you're coming from. And yeah, I'm just so curious with WWDC, man, because for some it can replace the computer, but for others they can't, depending on the flow. But yeah.
And then there's the Apple Pencil Pro, which we talked about a little bit, but this has 3 like major features. Number one is the squeeze gestures,
which is cool. I think that's cool.
Pressure sensitive. Yeah, super cool. I think the barrel roll feature is really cool too. Yeah. Like being able to roll, like, because you think with an actual paintbrush or with a certain types of like a highlighter.
That's what I was thinking too, the highlighter use.
Yeah. When you turn it, you get different angles, right? For that, and different types of like lines that you can draw with that. Whereas this kind of allows you to do that, which is really neat in my opinion. And then there's haptic feedback,
which we know Apple, that's one thing. Apple's amazing with their haptics. Their haptic motors are sick. So bringing that to the Apple Pencil, I think it'll be cool for sure. And I'm sure different, third-party applications will take advantage of it in certain ways. And, I still think at some point it'll be compatible with the Vision Pro. That's my far-fetched idea. Giving you some haptic feedback when you're virtually interacting with the Vision Pro. Again, right now it's only for the iPad Pro, but I think that's maybe an insinuating factor moving forward.
Yeah, I think this is one of the more exciting upgrades from this event. It doesn't seem like a lot, like squeeze, barrel roll, haptic feedback, but that's a lot of tech inside this little bitty pencil.
And I did look it up. It still kept your double tap feature. I thought maybe the squeeze will replace it, but no, it doesn't. Double tap is still there. And we also got Find My. Find My was included in there, which is cool.
And you got hover. This thing is cool.
Yeah.
It's cool.
Yeah, it's a cool little stylus. And they kept it at the same price, that was the biggest surprise.
I agree. Yeah.
But I didn't look up, does it have So I know it has Find My support, but is there like a little speaker or a little chime, something a noise that it can make? I don't know. We'll look into that.
I don't think so. I think it's going to be similar to how you do Find My for the Apple TV remote, I would
Okay.
think.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
I don't know.
I guess we'll find out. But that's cool. And then the Apple Pencil Pro is, again, only compatible with the new M4 iPad Pro and the M2 iPad Airs.
Yeah.
Because of, I think, like I said, the landscape camera situation and where it's charging and where it's pairing.
Yeah.
Yeah. But the USB-C Apple Pencil is compatible with the M4 iPad Pro. So if you want a cheaper alternative that doesn't have the barrel roll and the squeeze and doesn't have pressure sensitivity, like if you're just like a note taker on your iPad, USB-C pencil, go for it. If you're, if you're actually doing design work where you need the different tools and, being able to have the tilt sensitivity and the pressure sensitivity and now the barrel roll and the squeeze, then you know who you are, for sure.
Yep. I don't know. So I think this is, again, despite the rants and stuff that I had earlier about, like, I think Apple's upgrade process is very questionable. I think their trade-in, like their methodology for that is super questionable. But there's no question that they make some amazing products.
They do.
The iPad, I think, if you're a creative, is amazing.
Yeah.
Like, I think it's amazing. If you're a creative, this thing is going to be, I mean, any iPad for that matter, but especially these Pros with the new Apple Pencil and the keyboard, I think, man. And the keyboard has did we mention it has haptics?
The trackpad does. The trackpad does. Yeah. The trackpad's a little bit bigger as well, and it's got haptics, which is awesome. Because although even though the trackpad on the current Magic Keyboard, it is small, but I guess the way that you use it is a little different, where like you don't realize how small it is. Because I use it for gesture-based controls. If I'm doing point and click stuff, I'm using my finger on the iPad Pro, and I use the trackpad for gestures, to like swipe between apps or zoom in or move my timeline around and things like that. But a welcome addition is a larger trackpad for sure. And then, so I mean, that's the iPad Pro in a nutshell. I'm very curious to see what the battery life is going to be like. I know it's going to be a brand new device, so battery is going to be at the best position at that point, but it's still a very thin device. It's still very powerful. It's pushing the OLED, So let's see what the battery life looks like on this thing, because they're saying it's supposed to be the same as the current iPad.
I think that'll be good just because of not only the OLED display, but the M4 and its power efficiency is notably better than the M2, the outgoing.
Yeah.
So yeah, I wouldn't be shocked if it had similar battery life,
for sure,
despite its thinness.
Absolutely. I know we're running along, but you want to do a quick little Final Cut and Logic Pro
update
for the people?
We can briefly talk about it. So Apple announced Final Cut Camera, which is alongside Final Cut Pro for iPad 2.
Yeah, but you do not need Final Cut Pro to get the Final Cut Camera, is my understanding.
Yeah, you don't. Yeah, you can, it's a separate thing,
and it's free,
but they work together.
Yeah.
So what I see Final Cut Camera just as like sort of an upgrade to the stock camera app with more pro features like focus peaking, which is something that if you do videography is a huge thing. So focus peaking basically will make a little outline on the display to show you what's in focus. So you can quickly just look and tell what's in focus. And pro cameras have had that for years.
Yeah.
Like all like the Sony cameras and stuff have that. It'll also be able to, I believe, adjust ISO and shutter speed, which is obviously things that we've wanted for a long time.
Just making the camera more pro,
Yeah.
It's a capable camera.
That being said, it is no way comparable to the Blackmagic camera app, which is, I mean, that you're talking about a pro camera. That's a pro camera.
Yeah.
But Final Cut Camera is going to be able to integrate with Final Cut Pro on the iPad for multicam applications.
For live multicam.
Yeah. So the whole thing I did that I thought was so great. Apple just like, no, you're actually your idea was pretty garbage.
Now all you need is just a couple of iPhones and you're good to go, man. You don't need all that stuff.
You don't need all that.
I didn't think about that for you. Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah. So what would be cool though is if they allowed that support for physical like standalone cameras. Now if they like had a module that you could do that, man,
that'd be cool.
That would be awesome. You can have multicam live in Final Cut Pro with your like Sony FX30.
Wild. Yeah. I wonder, I guess we got to see the compatibility list. I'm sure any iPhone can use that application. There's probably some sort of limitation to it. But we'll look
Yeah,
into it.
there's limitations on even like which ones can do focus peaking.
Okay.
So yeah, like I think you need a fairly recent here. Actually, I can tell you.
Okay.
Let's see. I thought I could. No, I can't.
Yeah.
So anyway, that we'll talk about that later. But there's also Logic got a huge update. To me, this is the most impressive update because now they have what they call a stem splitter, which allows you basically to break down a music track into 4 parts: drums, bass, vocals, and other.
That's wild.
So yeah,
that's cool.
And I heard that it's really fast. So there's other AI stem splitters out on the web. In fact, MPC launched one recently with their product. But having this right on the iPad, powered by AI, powered by the Apple Silicon, like being able to tap a button and take your favorite song, you can just take the drums out of that song and then reuse them on your own track, right?
Or see what that song sounds like without the drums in the background, which would be kind of cool.
Or take the vocals out.
Yeah,
take the vocals out.
Put your own verse in there.
What I was thinking, how cool would it be if that integrated with Apple Music? I doubt that's the case.
Oh, so you could just like pull a song?
Yeah, you can just take any song from Apple Music and just remove the vocals. And now you have your own, you can just use that beat, or you can take the drum pattern or take the bass pattern from that and then modify it. Just and create your own little remix. Which
I know you're going to have fun with that for sure.
I'm going to have fun with it.
Yeah. Which is awesome. But I mean, Apple kept it short. 35 minutes for their presentation. They hit on everything that they needed to. iPad Air, iPad Pro, Final Cut, Logic Pro, and there was no one more thing. No. But
the one more thing was get your wallets out.
Get your